Welcome to episode 12 of Mina Narrates. I am your host, Mina. Thanks for joining me in my library. This episode features part 3 of There's a Killer in My Town by Charlie Blackmoore, aka Beautiful Nightmare. This is the 4th part of an 11-part series I am honored to be allowed to present to you. This series is planned to be released every Wednesday at 5:45 p.m. Central, 6:45 p.m. Eastern, via YouTube premiere through October to December 2nd. However, technical difficulties have been haunting my videos recently. I'm getting them out as close as I can, but they will be premiered. We are back in the present time now per part 1. Let's see what's going on with Rogue Sheriff Dean Randall, the town of Snow Creek, and our killer. Before we begin, please remember to like, comment, share, subscribe, and ring that bell if you haven't, so you're notified when I release new videos. You don't want to miss any of this series. Now, let me whisper in your ears. Callie, the last letter I wrote probably gave you the impression that I was dead, huh? Well, I'm all right, for now. I could have made it less cryptic, but if I had written it any other way, then just listen. All you need to know right now is that there is a serial killer on the loose, and yes, I'm still hunting the son of a bitch. Now I want to explain what happened after I ended the last letter, so here it goes. I had written the last letter when I had gotten home, despite my house being a crime scene. I proceeded to run upstairs into my bedroom, where I grabbed all of my clothes out of the closet. I managed to grab everything from the dresser drawers as well as my desk, where I kept case files for each murder and stuffed it all into as many bags as I could possibly find. Yet I only took the memorable and meaningful things that Marcus had given me. I may have lost my husband to a psychopath, but there wasn't a chance in hell I was going to completely lose the memory of him. There were so many things I wanted to take along with me, but there wasn't a lot of time to pack it up and still have been able to figure out where I would be going next. I knew there wasn't much time before the police started their manhunt. I had gone rogue, and the only thing that tops hunting a psychopathic serial killer on the precinct's list of importance, it's find a rogue cop. I knew they'd say I was crazy and try to haul my ass off to the asylum in Haven Valley, which wasn't going to happen. The most important things I had to grab were these envelopes. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to write to you. However, I did grab the police scanner out of the hallway closet, stuffed it into a separate bag, and quickly sneaked out of the house, only to see a police cruiser slowly driving down the street. I ducked behind a bush and watched the officer shine his spotlight towards the front of my house, outlining every intricate detail of sighting and illuminating the living room through the main window before driving off down the street. Fuck! They were already out looking for me, and I still had no idea where the hell I was going to go. By this point, they would be ass-deep into the procedures of this case, combing my financial records, looking into real estate listed under my name, and conducting their searches on all of them. Lucky enough for me, I knew of the one place that was no longer listed under my name. I was certain they had already tied said place to me, but it's been abandoned since my parents died. My family used to own a cabin on the outskirts of town, so it was the only place I could lay low long enough to gather my thoughts, maybe get a few hours of sleep, and further study each case going all the way back to the first murder, Ethan's. Not sure if I had said this before, but I'll say it now. The only way to catch the person doing this is to think like a criminal. You have to put yourself in their shoes. It was the one lead I was going to get. It wasn't easy to stealthily drive across town without drawing attention to myself, especially since everyone in town knew what kind of car I drove. Marcus's loving face will be the one thing that I won't be able to forget. There was always a dashing smile plastered to his face whenever I would get home from work. Dinner would always be ready on the table, no matter how late work had kept me. I already missed the light snoring in the living room when I'd get home from a long, tiresome day, or hearing that sweet, loving voice when I would wake up in the morning. Oh, Marcus, I'm so sorry I wasn't there to protect you. I wish more than anything I hadn't gone to work that morning. that I could go back and do it all again. The nice memories of my late husband faded into something more sinister, something that I didn't want to think about. How could my life have been completely turned upside down in 1 week? How could I have practically lost everything in the few hours that I had been at work that unfortunate day? What exactly had I done to piss someone off to this extent? What could I do to clear my name other than catching the person responsible? Those thoughts brought me back to the night Tanya was killed. The guy whom had killed Tanya claimed to have found the dead body laying on the ground, claimed to have been startled by my deputy, which caused him to kill her. If only that truly were the case, then why was he carrying a knife with him? Or was it the killer's knife left behind because something actually had startled him? As such, the guy whom Tanya and I had shot, could the guy responsible for killing Tanya have been carrying that knife as a way of protecting himself since the news decided to broadcast about the murders on live television? I still don't know what he had been trying to say to me right before he passed away. Believe me, I had roamed through every possible thing he could have been attempting to tell me. Yet I came up empty-handed. Jeez, could this situation be any worse? I didn't bother to flick the turn signal down indicating that I was turning left. The car jerked to the right a bit once the tires hit an old run-down dirt road. The bare trees stretched their ashen branches into the sky, screaming to the clouds for nothing more than a moment of solace. The fire from a few months ago had damaged them beyond repair. I was accustomed to seeing the leafless, decaying things. The cabin, on the other hand, I was not a fan of what my eyes were seeing. The once white panels were now green-covered moss, lightly coated with frost. The brown shingles atop the roof had caved in. A few of the windows were cracked and shattered due to the weather exposure and occasional vandal over the years. The front deck, still damp from the dusting of snow that happened the previous night, the decrepit-looking structure was once a place I had called a second home. I pulled around back of the cabin. It looked a little better than the front had, but it was still slowly rotting away. I parked the car in the furthest section of the surrounding trees that I could find, used the unharmed brush and old ripped tarp to cover it, before I carefully made my way through the yard in case the bear traps my dad used to have laid out were still there. Something squeaked underneath my right foot once I had stepped onto the cracked cement. I looked down to see an old brown doll. The left eye was missing. The stitching of each arm and leg had come unstrung, and a few of the fingers on the hands were gone. Damn animals. It was once the most beautiful doll I had laid eyes on as a kid. It was the one thing most precious to me at the time, until my father drunkenly destroyed it. The doll was just a reminder of how many bruises and the broken arm I had acquired that day because my mother was too frightened to defend herself, let alone 3 small children. My childhood hadn't been the best. It was the reason why my brother committed suicide when he turned 11. He just couldn't take the beatings any longer. There were often times when my sister and myself thought it would be best to follow in the footsteps of our brother and leave the abuse behind. In the end, we decided that once we were old enough, then we would be able to get away. We were honestly relieved when the police broke the news that our parents had been killed in a car accident. Identifying the bodies were easy, and actually the best thing that happened during my childhood. Having said all of that, it would have been easier just to say I had a bad childhood, but I figured it was best to explain now than in the future. I kicked the beaten-up doll out of my way, lifted up the welcome mat outside the back door to see the rusted key to this rickety aged place. I slipped inside, dug around the dusty, cobweb-filled kitchen until I found an old-fashioned oil lamp. It's been 10 years since my parents were killed in that miraculous accident. 10 years is too long for a beautiful place like this to sit without anyone taking care of it. Like I've said before, my childhood wasn't the best, so it didn't faze me much when my parents passed away. Then again, I had my younger sister to worry about. We made it through just fine. Things actually got better for me once I had Marcus to help me through the rough times. And now, well, Let's just say the only thing keeping me going at that current point in time was the thought of catching the person whom had taken away the true love of my life and making sure you weren't dragged into this screwed up mess. The cabin had power. I knew that because I'd been the anonymous person paying to keep it on. I couldn't actually use the power for anything other than to plug in the police scanner in order to keep tabs on the investigation and to keep the refrigerator running to keep my food cold. The floor groaned beneath my feet when I carried everything into the dining room. I spread out the case files across a rotting, worn-down table. My eyes glanced at each and every photo I had. I read through all of the reports and witness statements. A sudden thought popped into my mind while I was staring down at the photos from Phillips and Curtis's murders. I remembered that night like it happened yesterday. Dimitri Jenkins was the only person whom had survived the night. He had been knocked out and only come to shortly after Luke and I had arrived, which led to Officer Kincaid being killed at our own precinct later that night. There it was. The only thing about these killings whom didn't quite fit other than my connection to everyone whom had passed away. Again, it was a small town. My mind gets stuck on the newfound theory that maybe, just maybe, it was a police officer responsible for the murders happening in the town. It was a ridiculous thought, trust me. I knew what it sounded like, but it was the only sensible theory I had at that particular moment. It would have definitely explained the intelligence of committing a crime without leaving any evidence behind, because he or she already knew forensic countermeasures. Was I seriously onto something? Was I really going to believe that someone whom had sworn to protect the townsfolk could actually do something as sick and twisted as this? No. I shook my head in disbelief. There wasn't any possibility an officer was capable of doing something as horrifying as that, yet the evidence was there. Was someone trying to frame me? I understood it. I mean, I was handed the job of sheriff after the other candidates were killed. Was someone within my own rank jealous about it and decided to take matters in their own hands even after killing off the competition in hopes that I would be the guilty party? No, just plain fucking no. You're tired, Dean, I told myself. A few hours of shut-eye should help you get your mind straight.
We have a 1054 on Lombard Street. Any unit in the vicinity, please respond.
The police scanner statically crackled.
10-4,
a woman's voice confirmed. I had almost forgotten how unpleasing that stupid device was when there was chatter going through the radio frequencies. I was beginning to regret turning on the annoying thing, but it needed to be on in case something major were to happen. The bothersome ticking of my wristwatch filled the silent room. Minutes were passing by faster than my brain could read, which made me all the more determined to find a clue hidden within the reports, the photos, and everything else in my possession. I stayed glued to that table for as long as I physically could, only stepping away once or twice to use the bathroom during what felt like the majority of the day. My time was devoted to my work. It was the only thing keeping me sane. The surrounding rooms eventually darkened, yet I remained sitting upright in the uncomfortable wooden chair. My back was in excruciating amount of pain. It didn't matter, though. The day was quickly fading into night. My stomach growled from hunger, yet churned from disgust. My mind was stuck on my theory, stuck on the evidence slowly presenting itself to me.
Officers, be advised, possible sighting of Sheriff Randall near the corner of Davenport and Raven Drive, over.
The dispatcher's scratchy voice interrupted my thoughts.
Officer Collins here, copy that. While finding the sheriff is critical, we also need to be on the lookout for any suspicious activity in town. Our killer's still out there, and we are damn well gonna find them,
Luke said. Jesus fuck, I sighed. I really am a wanted man. How the hell am I gonna explain this if somebody finds me here?
Negative on Dean. It was just a few teenagers jogging,
another voice cut in.
We've checked everywhere in town. He must have fled. Where would he have?
Luke's voice started but faded out.
Actually, we should probably switch over to an encrypted channel. If he hasn't left town, he may be listening. He has nothing left in this town. Of course he fled. You saw how distraught he was about his husband, Jenkins. There has to be a reason for him to stick around this town. We just need to find it. Copy that.
Of course I haven't fled town, ignorant bastards. I have a murderer to catch, I grumbled. My annoyance level already hit its maximum. I was drained emotionally, physically, and mentally. There wasn't any chance in hell that they were going to find out what else was keeping me around the area of Snow Creek. 4 days and 3 nights of closely studying the cases had passed by in a breeze. My mind had been delved so deep into the theory of an officer being responsible that I barely noticed how hungry I was until my stomach loudly gurgled. I hadn't realized exactly how long I'd been sitting in that chair until I glanced at my watch. It was 6:30 in the evening of the 4th day. I stood up from the chair. The muscles in my back ached as I stretched my sore and tired limbs. My feet trampled across the old newspapers laying on the floor upon going into the other room. The sun was low over the horizon when I peered out of the small kitchen window. Everything outside the cabin hadn't moved in the time I had been there. I was grateful to have remembered a family heirloom, even if it was a worn-down building. My stomach was so unsettled from looking at those photos that I decided not to eat once again. There was one thing that stuck out to me about my theory. I understood that killers like to keep trophies from each victim they killed. But what exactly was the reason behind taking Marcus's genitals when the person was adamant on taking the liver of each victim? What made Marcus so different from the rest? How could they even think to do that? Adrenaline coursed through my entire body upon each new dark thought about my theory that entered my mind. I was on a roll with looking over the files, exhausted from lack of sleep and honestly fed up with all of the bullshit that came across the police scanner.
Dispatch.
A rough voice filled the room.
Go ahead,
the dispatcher responded.
This is Edwin Culligan. I think I've found Dean Randall.
My heart sank upon hearing that statement. The coursing adrenaline that had been freely flowing through my veins vanished as quickly as it had come, replaced solely by a lump in my throat and the pounding of dread in my heart. Shit. This was not how this was going to end. No, not until I catch the damn killer. I apologize for this letter being short. I wish I had more time to explain the rest of my time at the cabin, but I am currently packing my things and soon I'll be on the road. No idea where I am going, but I will write once I get settled somewhere. I love you, dear sister. Dean. Thank you for listening to Part 3 of There's a Killer in My Town by Beautiful Nightmare, a.k.a. Charlie Blackmoore. For this reading, I'm using the paperback version of the book published on 20th of July, 2020. If you want to get your own, there's a link in the description. You can follow her on Amazon or follow her on one of her Twitter accounts, both linked in the description as well. Speaking of which, she has just published another book of short stories. I'll have the link for you to choose paperback or Kindle version in the description. Now, Dean is definitely on the run with his own men and the former sheriff hunting him. Do you have an idea who the murderer is? Do you have any guesses? I'm not giving any spoilers. If you've read the book, please do the same. What do you think of the situation in Snow Creek now? What do you think of Dean, our hero sheriff, taking off on his own to find the killer? What do you think of his theory? Let me know what you think in the comments. While you're down there, please give the video a like and share it out. If you aren't subscribed, consider subscribing and ringing the bell till it rings so you don't miss the next part. I want to say thank you to all of you who have subscribed. I appreciate your faith in me and enjoyment of my content. Again, I want to say thank you to everyone who has been so welcoming, supportive, and helpful. I know I've asked for a lot of input from you all. I just want to give you the best quality content I can. Until we meet again, have a wonderful day or night, and be safe.